Hi there! Welcome to Pallet University and the next episode of our Real Biologist Reacts series to the art of Joshua Dunlop. Make sure to check out all of Joshua's links, as always, for the series. They will be down below. And we'll be ending off, as usual, on his ArtStation page where all of this art can be found. So if you want to know where you can find all of these wonderful pieces of art, stay tuned to the end of the video. Also, if you like this kind of content, we do have a Patreon if you feel like this content is worthy of supporting. The link to that will be down below as well. And while you're down there, make sure to leave a like, as well as let me know which of these 4 Pokemon that we're going to be talking about today is your favorite. These 4 are kind of weird in that only one of them is really based on an actual animal. So this is the first sort of set of these pieces of art by Joshua that we're looking at that aren't so much biology based in the Pokemon's original design. So I'm really curious to see what biological aspects Joshua's going to include. So if you're excited for that, like I said, make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. And with that, I guess let's just get started. As you can probably see, we are doing the fluffy pink boys from Generation 1. Clefairy, Clefable, Wigglytuff, and Jigglypuff. Yes, a little out of order, but that's fine. So let's start off with Clefairy. So like I said, Clefairy and Clefable are not really based off of any specific animal, unlike a lot of other Pokemon. So I feel like Joshua could have done kind of whatever he wanted as an inspiration. And it looks, I'm really not quite sure what he's going for with the face here. And we'll see it's a lot more noticeable in Clefable, but the face is super flat, which makes sense because in Clefairy and Clefable, they're basically just like completely flat face. Let's take a closer look at the eyes though, because usually eyes can tell you sort of what type of animal he's going for. They're not quite as like beady as I would think for some kind of rodent, although like the little snout here kind of reminds me of some kind of rodent, just based off of it's not as sort of pronounced. The snout, or rostrum is the proper like biological term for like the snout part of the skull. It's not as like pronounced as it would be in like a rabbit or something, but it is very like rabbit-like in that it's got these 2, and of course my landlords and the like land management company at my apartment decides to mow the lawn now. That's fine. You might not be able to hear it, but I can. Anyway, it's got these 2 little things here on like the upper lip, which basically are just like have a bunch of extra nerve endings in them for the whiskers. And that's a really common thing, that they're like right here on the upper lip, as well as sort of on the cheeks and above the eyebrows, which makes sense because Clefairy has them, you know, here. Oh, I'm sure you can hear that now. All right, hopefully the land management people have moved on to a different patch of grass that's not right outside my window. We can move on. Anyway, I don't even really remember what I was talking about with Clefairy. Oh yeah, it was vaguely rabbit-like. I guess I'll wait even more. Okay. Hopefully the land management people who have been mowing the lawn right outside my window have moved on. I can't hear them anymore, so hopefully you can't either. Anyway, Clefairy. So, vaguely rabbit-like face. Again, not super... What did I do? Not super, super rabbit-like, just because, you know, rabbits do generally have much flatter faces than do like rodents, because if you missed the last episode where I talked about Pikachu and Raichu, rabbits are not rodents. They're actually their own group called lagomorphs. So while most rodents do have a quite long rostrum, rabbits do have a more rounded face and rostrum, but it's not nearly as scrunched up or brachycephalic as this Clefairy seems to be. So brachycephalic, fun fact, is also the term for like the dogs that have like really scrunched up faces, like pugs. Yeah, that's what that term means. It just means your face is very scrunched. And that's apparently what Clefairy kind of is looking like here. So what I think is really interesting is the hands, because Clefairy is kind of weird in that it's got 3 fingers, but only 2 of them have claws, which is actually kind of a thing. Because if you've ever seen like a dog's paw, you know, the little thing that they have, the little nub that they have like up here on their hand, that's basically their thumb. You know, it's super, super reduced and they don't really use it for much anymore. But Clefairy sort of seems that it sort of still uses it. It's still, you know, very prominent on its hand. It just lacks a claw. So I'm really not quite sure. And I'm sure, you know, as you can see right below me, you know, Clefairy still has it. I think, I don't know why they designed it that way, but that's just Joshua remaining true to the source material. Then moving on to the feet, I don't know. I'm actually going to look up a picture of Clefairy because I don't actually have that on my screen. I put that in post editing. Because he draws it with 4 toe claws here. And I don't know if that's the way Clefairy actually is, or if it's just 1 and he took that liberty. So let me look. Actually does only have just like a single toe claw. So this is a creative liberty that he took, splitting it into 4, which makes a lot more sense. You know, it's pretty rare for any animal to just have a single claw. I think the only... I want to say the only animals that do that are horses. And so a claw and a nail are slightly different. So a claw is basically, there's bone inside of that. Whereas you think of like your nails, where it's just a piece of keratin, basically some hardened keratin that grows out of the skin. Whereas like I said, a claw has bone inside of that, which is why like when people like declaw their cats, you're basically just ripping off this first knuckle, this first bone in your finger. That's what declawing a cat is. So don't do that. Don't declaw your cats. Also, keep them inside. Don't have outdoor cats. They're really bad for the environment. Anyway, so yeah, I believe the only animals that I am aware of that have just a single toe claw / nail are horses. So it makes a lot of sense that these are just sort of combined into one. Almost similar to like Excadrill, how its claws, most of the time when it's just standing, are sort of together like this, and then it can split them when it, you know, uses an attack or something. So I think that's basically what he's going for here. In that it's got 4 toes, but they, just for like stability reasons, might like sort of almost fuse into a single nail and or claw. Let's see what else. I like the little wings, and it's a little hard to see just because it's you know, the lighting. I don't think that it is, but it almost looks like he sort of integrated it into the ear. I would say he probably didn't do that. That's sort of what it looks like. I think Clefairy's ears are also proportionally smaller than they're seen here, but you know, for nocturnal animals especially, it looks like Clefairy has circular pupils, which doesn't make much sense for a nocturnal animal. So basically, that's, you know, a lot of people think that like in snakes, for example, some people falsely assume that's like if it's got a vertical pupil, it's venomous. And like you can argue that technically all snakes are sort of venomous, but the ones that are like medically significant to people, some people think, oh, it's got a vertical pupil, it's dangerous. That's just not the case at all. Vertical pupils in basically any group are not a synapomorphy. So a synapomorphy is a defining characteristic of a group. So it, because it's not a synapomorphy, it basically just comes up erratically. You know, different groups have it basically just because they're nocturnal. But because Clefairy is pretty much known to be nocturnal, or at least live in dark environments, you would expect that it would have vertical pupils, but it doesn't. It doesn't look like it anyway. It's a little hard to see. You can kind of see, let me make this a little smaller. You can kind of see like right here on that eye. that it looks sort of circular. You can also see, like right here, as well on that eye. So it looks like it's got circular pupils, which again would not make sense for an animal that either is nocturnal or lives in a dark environment. And, you know, Clefairy is only found in like Mount Moon in Generation 1, for example. I'm almost positive you can find it outside in other games, but I don't know that for sure. I'll put that in post whether you can or can't. But if it was nocturnal, or possibly crepuscular, which means they're active at dawn and dusk instead of just during the day or just at night, it would make sense if it's got pretty small eyes comparatively, you know, to its head, to have these giant ears, because then it would be able to hear a lot better when it can't really see. So perhaps that's why he made the ears proportionately a little bit bigger. But the wings are obviously a lot more pronounced in Clefable, and we'll talk about them once we get there. But it looks like he sort of just made them just like extra hairy parts. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of like skeletal structure in that, because the only thing that I could think of that would make that even possible would be some kind of weird... well, maybe it is attached to the ear, because the only thing that I could think of that would make it even slightly rigid, because there's no bone in them. That's just... It's very rare for animals to evolve new bones. What they usually do is modify ones that are already there to do something else. For example, mammals have 3 bones in your ear. They're really, really tiny, whereas reptiles only have 1. But the other 2 that mammals have come from the bone that was at the end of our jaw that attached to our skull. And so basically, the 2 bones that touch in reptiles when their lower jaw meets their skull, those 2 bones, mammals evolved them to be inner ear bones, so we have a more complicated hearing structure than reptiles do. So, long story short, you don't grow new things out of nowhere. You need to adapt something that's already there to do whatever new task you need it to do. So I could potentially see these being made out of cartilage and being some sort of derivative of some cartilage of the ear. That's the only thing I could think of. We'll take a closer look when we look at Clefable, because it's much less clear that that's the case. But we'll see. Is there anything else that I really want to talk about? The hair looks really cool, or the fur, I guess. So I'm really curious what like the evolutionary purpose of this would be. My guess would be that it would just be ornamental and like showing off. Either there's like very small differences between individuals that like different Clefairy can notice and use to recognize one individual from another, or potentially to show off for mates. That'd be the only thing that I could think of would be the purpose of the little hair swirl here. And we'll see that in, you know, the other 3 Pokemon that we're going to talk about here. But anyway, I've talked about Clefairy for a long time now. Let's move on. Clefable. So, Clefable, as you can see, the wings are much farther away from the ear. So, the chances of these wings being some sort of a cartilaginous derivative of like the cartilage in your ear are pretty slim. However, look at how derpy its face is. I think at least if you were to look at this in isolation, I would definitely be like, yeah, that looks like an Easter bunny face. That's what it looks like to me. But because it's so flat relative to the eyes, it just, something about it just looks super weird. And here you get a much better look that Clefable's pupils are definitely circular, so it's a diurnal animal. One thing that I also talked about with Pikachu in the last one is that instead of just making the ear this just tube off the head, he actually makes it a pinna and gives it an opening, which is, you know, how ears actually work. You know, if your ears were just these fleshy things that came off your head without an opening, they'd be really bad at doing their job. So because they have the opening, that makes way more sense. I don't think there's really anything extra with Clefable that I didn't actually talk about already with Clefairy. Again, the fur just looks really cool. Oh, the toes. So I know for a fact Clefable does have 2 toe claws in its art. So And I don't know if they face each other like that, though. I'm going to look that up, too. So they do a little bit in Clefable's actual art, but it doesn't look like it's that much. Yeah, I don't know why an animal would... what adaptation those would provide. Having two pretty big claws, like, faced in toward each other like that. I'm really not sure. Off the top of my head, I can't think of what that would be useful for. That having them be, instead of, like, facing in like this, to having them sort of separate and facing, you know, straight forward. I can't think of what this would help them with. Let's see. A big fluffy tail that doesn't look like there's any sort of skeleton in there, but it's really hard to tell from this angle. Again, the wings, I really have no idea what those could be. I guess it's with using a big stretch of the imagination, they could be like modified shoulder blades, or shoulder blades are actually called scapula, or scapulae when it's plural. I guess they could be. They definitely would not be ever used for flight, which, Clefairy and Clefable can't actually fly, which makes sense. So that's the only thing that I guess it even could possibly be in that spot. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a fairy Pokemon, like the OG fairy Pokemon. So I guess a little magic and mystery in it makes sense. Next up, we have everyone's favorite little fluff ball, Jigglypuff. So again, with Jigglypuff, I think he took like the same exact inspiration, where it's like, but this one actually makes sense because Wigglytuff is much more rabbit-like than Clefairy and Clefable, or even Jigglypuff. But like, there's really nothing descript to Jigglypuff at all. It's literally just a ball of fur with some big eyes. Again, with the circular pupils indicating that it's a diurnal animal, which does make sense as well, because you find it outside in Generation 1. Although it does evolve with a Moonstone. I don't know. Although I think, well, let's look at no, I guess they do curl the same way. So I was thinking if there was a difference between like the hair curl. So this one goes counterclockwise. Oh no, there is. So yeah, Jigglypuff's goes clockwise, whereas Clefairy's goes counterclockwise, and so does Clefable's. Interesting. So we'll see if that's a common pattern with Wigglytuff when we get there. It looks like there's some whiskers around the face as well. There's some like right here, and some right here. Doesn't look like there's really any whiskers on the cheeks, but there is some right on the immediate like lips. Which, I guess this looks way more natural than if you just drew like the mouth without any sort of like nose and or anything else on the face, or just like the big ol' eyes and then just a mouth. That honestly look really creepy, personally. But yeah, once again, I don't think there's really much else to talk about with these, because it's just like a ball of fluff with some eyes and ears. With Wigglytuff, I think there should be a decent amount more to talk about, because it's actually based off of an animal. So let's move on to Wigglytuff. So it looks like Wigglytuff breaks our streak, or breaks our little pattern, because while Jigglypuff's went clockwise, Wigglytuff sort of curls up and then counterclockwise. So, oh well. But Wigglytuff, this is exactly how I would expect it to look. It's like got these big floppy bunny ears. It's again is very flat, brachycephalic faced. Although unlike like Clefable, it does have sort of like a recognizable head area, where I know definitely in Clefable's art, it's literally just like a blob, where it's like there's no really defined head shape with Clefable, whereas with Wigglytuff, even in Wigglytuff's art, it's at least more defined, not super well defined, but it's there. I think Wigglytuff's arms actually are a bit longer than in its actual art, but I don't know that for sure. I wish that you got a better look at its legs, because it does have these little like characteristic like sort of bunny toes, because rabbits, well, no, I guess rabbits do have claws at the end of their at the end of their legs, the end of their feet. So, I don't know. I guess that's another creative thing that he could have taken, is, you know, adding just some small claws. But I think that's one thing that Joshua tends not to do, is add things like claws, whereas things that you can't really explain. I can't think of an example off the top of my head. I remember specifically talking about some things, some creative liberties that he took in like the Bulbasaur episode. So if you haven't seen that, that's the first one we did. Make sure to go check that out as well. But yeah, Wigglytuff. Anyway, so once again, with some big blue eyes, round eyes, very bunny-like snout. Although I kind of would have liked if he had like made this part like darker, like a rabbit nose. Well, actually, do rabbits have darker noses? I don't actually know. I'm gonna look that up too. No, so I guess unlike, because I was thinking of sort of like dogs and cats, where they don't have hair on like the very end of their nose. Rabbits actually do. So that's something. I've never had a pet rabbit, so I didn't really pay attention. Well, I guess that makes sense. And it's not like Wigglytuff has like a noticeable nose anyway. But once again, I'm very glad that he gave it like a mouth region with like a nose and lips and stuff. Because once again, if it had just been the eyes and then this, that'd be super creepy. Is there anything else I really want to say about Wigglytuff? Not really. It is a little odd for an animal for its head to be like half of its body size. Like, could you imagine? Like, I'm roughly 6 feet tall. Could you imagine if my head was 3 feet tall? That'd be so weird. Anyway, don't picture that. That's very creepy. Anywho, I think that's pretty much it for this episode. So like I said, we'll end off at Joshua's ArtStation page, so you can check him out if you so choose. So like I said at the beginning, make sure to check out all of Joshua's socials down in the description below. We also, he's putting up new stuff all the time. For example, he recently put out, in the very first, I think, episode of this series, I talked about Drowsy, because Hypno had not been put out yet, but he has recently put out a piece of art for Hypno, which looks even more terrifying than you are expecting. And, like, Drowsy is a very creepy Pokemon, but the piece of art actually looks very cute. So probably the next episode that I'm going to do is going over some of the newer ones, because he did put out new pieces of art, like I said, for Hypno, as well as updated ones for Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur, so I might go over back on those, or maybe I'll save that for later in the series when there's not as many new ones that I haven't talked about at all to cover yet. So let me know your thoughts on these ones down below. Which one of these four that we talked about today was your personal favorite? I think for me it was probably Clefairy. I don't know why, especially like the background just looked super great for it against like a really nice like starlit sky, which makes a lot of sense for Clefairy. But yeah, that's probably my favorite. Let me know yours down below. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Pallet_U to keep up on all things Pokemon science. Like I said at the beginning, we do have a Patreon page if you feel like our content is worthy of supporting in that way. We have lots of perks, including an exclusive Discord server and exclusive Patreon-only videos. So make sure to check that out down in the description below as well. And as always, there's a time and place for everything.